Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, back for 2026. Apologies for being MIA for so long. It's great to see some in the community reaching out, asking when our first podcast would be happening. So here I am, dropping one for the start of the year. We're just on the eve of the State of Origin match between WA and Victoria. Get to see the best players in action, get to see how the new rules are going to be implemented. So a lot of footy happening. There's a lot of trial games, preseason, intra clubs. So it's back ready to go for another season. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via X. For me, it's Swiz26. Feel free, shoot me a message, tag me, and I'll be able to get in contact with you. This year, we'll have the league as well, the Open League, Supercoach Insider 806357. Great way for those who are getting in contact with us that you can just drop your team names when you're sending us a message, and very easy then for us to go search through our league so that we can give you and provide better help going forward. Also, it's great to see for us how our community are going. We had so many top finishers last year who were inside that top 100 mark, but it's always great to see our community going better each year. So feel free, once again, 806357. As I said, it's been a while since I've been here. A lot going on personally in my life, including the birth of my daughter. So it's been a massive change. I've been saying to Ben and Chris for a while that, like, how do you guys not have time for podcasting? Well, I completely understand now. I'm trying to fit life in. Still been doing some podcasting on the side. I'm back at my junior club, Rangers, who have been getting me on their podcast quite regularly. Well, actually, I'm running that podcast with another guy. So it's been great doing something different and chatting cricket at a local level. But yeah, back here to talk footy. I was with the coaches panel the other day to discuss their number 7 player, which was Marcus Bontempelli. Always great to chat with MJ and the boys, especially about the Bont. You know, there was a lot really of information to share about him. And, he's been one of the best players in the league, let alone maybe arguably the best Dogs player of all time. So great to chat about him. And yeah, if you don't, or if you haven't before subscribed and liked to the coaches panel, definitely give them a listen, because MJ and the boys do a massive job throughout the preseason. And definitely worth a listen. Today, as always, through the preseason, try to do a bit of a team discussion, as it is the eve of the State of Origin. You know, there's been a bit of tinkering, actually a lot of tinkering as always. I'm sure there'll be plenty of tinkering coming in as we start seeing the trial matches and the actual proper preseason cup. There is a lot going on in regards to rule changes that I'll discuss as I'm going through the podcast. With my team, I usually like to have a look at a couple alternatives. There's a few players that, unless they get injured, they're pretty well locked away. But for some positions, there are 2 or 3 players that I'm sort of still looking at, and that'll all depend on preseason. I'm probably focused a little bit more on guns and rookies at the moment, which is quite surprising, because usually with these extra trades, you kind of play it a little bit more like AF has in the past, where you're probably leaning towards mid prices, but there is reasons for that at the moment. But that's not to say I won't tinker with my team to get a few more mid prices in, especially if some put their hand up with strong performances. But at the moment, I do feel like there's quite a few good rookies from this previous draft that look like they're going to get early opportunity. So, and not just actually from the previous draft, but some players who have been in the system for a couple of years but are coming back from injury. But I will discuss that as we go through. I will start off today with the ruck line, and the reason for that is because that is where we've seen the most rule changes. So in 2026, we're going to see a few things. Firstly, the ball is going to get thrown up. So the ruckman are going to know where the ball's going in the center, in particular center bounces. The ruckman can no longer wrestle for a center bounce. So if you think at the start of each quarter, it's going to be a center throw up, and then after each goal, so you're probably looking at 20 to 30 times a game, the ball is going to be thrown up in the middle. That is going to favor players who like to run and jump, like your Luke Jacksons, Tim English's, TDK is another good one for that. Now, that's not to say your Gorns and your Cherries and Grundys won't adapt and do really well at that situation as well, but there is the possibility that those players that do like to run and jump will, potentially find the ball or find that hit out a little bit more often, and it might just end up costing some of these players a couple hit outs. I don't think a lot is going to change too much with probably the best rucks in this case, but as we go further down, maybe your Witzes, your Nanks, those players might struggle to adapt a little bit more compared to those rucks that do have more agility. The bigger changes is going to be the rule that the Sandful has been playing for a while, which is in between the arcs. If a ball gets kicked and it just rolls out of bounds, doesn't matter if a couple players are chasing it, it will just automatically be a free kick. So we're going to see an uptick potentially for halfback flanks who will be taking these kicks, and the ruckman not getting that throw in as they would have in the past. Now, this might only happen a couple times a quarter, but nonetheless, if that's, say, 8 times throughout a game and a ruck might win 50% of that, and out of that, that's one hit out of advantage of those 4 hit outs that they win, it's still a deduction of 5 points from their overall score. So the prediction is we might see a slight drop for all rucks and might see a slight boost for halfback flanks because of this situation. Now, that doesn't necessarily, it's always going to be a halfback flank taking that kick, but if the ball's kicked down the line 20 metres, 30 metres, 50 metres, even if a player's close, you're probably thinking it's going to be that kind of quarterback role, which the halfback flankers usually play. So we are going to see a slight deduction there. The other part is where we've had for so long, the ruckman will be 40, 50 metres away because there's been a quick kick out of a stoppage, and then there's a tackle and a ball up from there. The rucks will nominate, put their hand up and run to that contest. The umpires will wait. There's no more of that anymore. So it reminds me a little bit about when we had the third man up and other players were jumping up left, right, and center, and you saw guys like Dunkley and Bont and those sort of players jumping up. Now you'll see those sort of players nominate, especially later probably in the game, if your big ruckman, your Cherries, your Gorns, those players start to tire off and they are further down the line, they might not make as many contests as possible as they used to, where some of these other players will jump up. And the advantage with especially those boys or teams who have those guys who do forward ruck, your Jacksons, your Thilthorpes, those sort of guys, if in their half, they're more likely to run up and get into these ruck contests than what maybe some of these other ruckmen would. So you could see maybe your Gorn and Jerry, they might potentially in these situations sit back and be that extra man further down the line, as they might not able to make every contest. So again, how many how many throw-ups that affects them will be interesting to see. Max Gorn was definitely speaking out about this the other day. So we can see that it's potentially a drop-off there. And it only will take, 3 or 4 times. And again, if their hit out to advantage rate drops, even by 1 or 2, that's another 5 to 10 points we're looking at dropping. So where we've got here for their stats last year, and Gorn's average 127.4, Cherry a 120, maybe even a Grundy at 125, and a Darcy Cameron at 111. Quite possibly that could scale back, and it might be a top ruck, might only average 120, could be even low, maybe 115, something like that, because just that impact that that those moments will have. And somebody like Tristan Sherry, who relies at being all those contests, so he can not only get clearances but tackle, because he does lay quite a lot of tackles. Ball gets hit down, opposition play gets it, and he wraps his arms around them. That could impact him significantly more than some of these other rucks. In saying that, at the moment, I do have Tristan Sherry very much in my team. Now, multiple reasons for this. One, it's easier to go down than up. Now, I did have Gorn when it first opened, but just sort of listening to him talk about it more, we do know he's aging that little bit more, but the big thing with Melbourne is the loss of Clary and Petrarca in that midfield. And now with the injuries to Viney, it's really sort of Jack Steele, Pickett, and then a collection of guys running through that. So his hit out to advantage rate could get affected just because of the lack of midfield talent that they have through there. So just sort of staying away from Gorn. The reason I still have Tristan Sherry in there is to do with the fixture. And if we could get this up now, he has a very friendly fixture for the first sort of 8, I think it's the 8 weeks when it comes to ruckman, because when it comes to rucks, it's a very different situation when we're looking at the fixture situation. because it's like a head-to-head matchup, probably more than any other position on the ground. Obviously, you still get the full backs and the full forwards, but when it comes to rucks outside of a pinch hitting with, or especially for teams that don't have a a two ruck setup, they're usually up against that same ruck all day. So if we get up there, those first 8 rounds in focus, you can see Port Adelaide's up first. We don't know if it's going to be Visitini or Sweet at the moment. Both of them played against each other in the ruck, and we probably didn't answer any further of our questions in their trial match. West Coast will probably be Flynn, Essendon with Brian out at the moment, and it's hearing that it's going to be Blankenston to sort of start the season. Carlton, Pitternet, Brisbane, Big O's retired, so it'd be 4, especially with Draper out. Richmond will be Nank, GWS Briggs, and then Geelong, most likely Stanley, but Blue Sarves, they've got Conway. So I'm not too worried about Cherry against any of those, and he could have a massive start to the year. Even with the drop-off of points through those less contests, I still think he should dominate those games. So he's in a very appealing pick. I just am wary a little bit about the rules. So watching the preseason games, if there is a massive drop-off of points, then I might look at sort of going down to another option. I'll talk about a couple of those options in a moment, but right now that fixture is very hard to get away from. The other part of it is he doesn't have an early buy. So as much as I'd love to flip his cash to one of the gun midfielders and get another premium midfielder in there, the fact that he doesn't have a buy and he's playing those extra weeks is very appealing. My second choice at the moment is Tim English. I do like Luke Jackson, but why Darcy's still around, I kind of would prefer a bigger role from him in the ruck, but he is playing midfield, so I'd like to see how that actually goes through a proper preseason game. But we know once Darcy sort of out injured long term, Jackson is a very good choice. And I have seen some people starting all 3 or starting Jackson as your R1 or R2, and that's why he's currently in 28% of sides. Tim English is currently in 17% of sides. He does have that early buy, which is frustrating, but I'll talk about navigating that in a moment. When we had these sort of different rules recently, 2-3 years ago, English did have a career year. And if we kind of look through his season stats, like that's, 2025, who still had a very good year, averaging 111. But I think we sort of go through, and some people kind of forget what he kind of did a couple years ago, where like he just started on like a house on fire. And you look at that first half where 134, 139, 139, 145, 139, 131. And he had a season average of 128. So I feel like English could be the big winner. He's got the aerobic capacity to get around the ground, and he doesn't rely as much on those hitouts to advantage compared to other rucks. He's so good at his movement and link-up play. And the big thing with him, he should be able to get to some more of those contests. So that round 3 bye is frustrating. But again, it's Briggs, it's Adelaide's ruck, who I'll talk about in a second. Essendon, again, Blankenston, Geelong, kind of who knows there. So it is a friendly start, even if then we get into that sort of Port Adelaide and Carlton situation. So, I'm really bullish on sort of how Tim English could start this year. And, very, very happy to kind of own him as that sort of, even if it's R1 more than anything, it's just what then do you do during the bye? Now, there is a guy running around for Adelaide, and this afternoon in the intra club, he was definitely the top ruck choice. He's already gone up 1% since earlier today, and that is Mac Andrews. So he ran rings around Riley O'Brien. Definitely seems to be Adelaide's first choice. If a guy like Liam Reedy, I think White, Visitini from Essendon, if there was another cheap option who was playing, I'd be very tempted to start Mac Andrew as R2 and him being my just like a rookie player on field, and put that money elsewhere, because I feel like it's a situation where he's going to be the number 1 ruck, go at least 80, and you kind of want those points on field, where I feel like he could be a bit wasted in this spot. I've played around with the idea, and it still might happen, maybe a White, maybe a Reedy if he is selected and playing in the forward line with a forward into the flex position. So then I can just move McAndrew from the flex to R3 depending on each week. But yeah, McAndrew, as long as he's playing in that round 3 game, which all signs say yes, he's a very fine cover for any of these other rucks that are going to miss that week. So you're not going to be affected by that. So yeah, really like him. White apparently has been playing a bit forward, but obviously Melbourne did bring in Myercheck, so how much sort of game time that sorts out. But there doesn't seem to be a real obvious another backup for Melbourne. So that could be a solution if like Gawn was to go down. Let's actually just have a look where they've got Melbourne listed here. Max Heath and still got Tom Campbell on the list, so I guess he'll come in. But yeah, could see some time. Liam Reedy, you feel like it's Pitternet and O'Keefe. That'll be the 2 main ones. But if he does look like he's going to be part of that squad and part of that team, then definitely has to be looked at. But at the moment, yeah, I'm sort of just staying away a little bit from Reedy just until we get some more clarification about his role. But yeah, in a perfect world, in regards to Reedy, it'd be he doesn't start but comes in at some point, so you could maybe cash out of McAndrew. But yeah, definitely somebody to look at. As I've said, I like Jackson. The big one I kind of like, but I'd want more clarification about this is Visitini from Port Adelaide, who's only owned by 2% at the moment. But yeah, if he does win out over Sweet at 300k, definitely somebody to look at. Cooper Duff Tyler is a forward ruck in 17% of teams, just kicked 5 goals in the intra-club. So don't mind that as a move as well. You could potentially have a White and then a Cooper Duff Tyler, and you could move them around and maybe McAndrew in your flex, or even Cooper Duff Tyler in your forward line with White, and Cooper Duff Tyler becomes that R3 option who can just sort of cover in case McAndrew's not there. Or if you wanted like your English or somebody like that for the week. So that's a fine selection as well, just again playing forward. But we did see what sort of West Coast last year. There was a player that's escaped me, but actually went reasonable, like about 50s or 60s, I think, from West Coast. And I'm sure if I go into the flex position, we'll actually work out who that was. But with no Oscar Allen there too, they're obviously missing some firepower in their forward line. So I'm just going to quickly go through because somebody will be screaming out the name going, what was it? No, Bailey Williams playing in the ruck. We know Flynn. Yeah, my apologies there. I know I didn't actually start him. So Archer Reed, that's who. Archer Reed. So he provided some good service for people. Definitely did enough to make some cash, and just there was a couple of weeks there that people needed cover, and he came on and just a nice little score for him. So Cooper Duff Tyler has a lot of tools, and you could definitely see him being a valid option in that forward line. So it's a player that I want to see how he goes in a proper practice match. But somebody that could set up that loophole option for you and give you some ruck cover. All right, we'll move on to the back line next. Interesting because a lot of people, and this is the same with the midfield, discussing, do we want to go premium players early with the buy? My theory with this is, if there's a player that I really want for the season, somebody like, and the obvious ones on the side, Wanganeen-Malira, I would rather just work it out throughout the early buy and have him than trying to work out how I'm going to get him in. We know how that St Kilda are basing everything around him. They've brought players in. They've paid him the big bucks. He is playing midfield where he was, started in the defense last year. This guy could be the best player in the comp this year. They're practicing him going forward, which I know he's kicked bags of, I think, 4 or maybe 3 in intra-club matches, just in case he gets the hard tag. We already know he can go into the back line, but he'll be in that midfield and he'll be dominating games. I feel like he could be 10 points ahead of the next defender anyway. So if you kind of don't get him, I don't feel like it's a situation of dropping cash. It's just more, people trying to go, okay, I don't want him on, that bye week. I'd rather go another premium, and that might be fine. So let's hypothetically just say, and this is the maths which is going to come in for all positions when you're thinking about midfield and forward. So let's just say you go, say, a Lockie Whitfield type, and Wanganeen-Malira on last year, or even like you could go projections, but they've got Whitfield projected quite well. But I think the best is like, well, you look at last year, you got Nasiah was 5 points ahead of Whitfield. So let's just hypothetically say it is 5 points again. And there's they have the same. I think Nasiah could jump 10 points ahead of Whitfield this year, but let's just say it's 5 points. So over those first, let's call it 10 weeks as we start to head towards the mid-buys, Wanganeen-Malira is going to outscore Whitfield by 50 points. Now, in that one bye weekend, Whitfield, let's just say, he comes down and scores 110. That puts him 60 points ahead over that period because Nasiah doesn't play that week. Whitfield does. So now Whitfield, yes, you've made 60 points on everybody. The thing people are forgetting is bye week is best 18. So people are going to have bench cover. And in the week, say, Wanganeen-Malira is missing, I might have a rookie on the bench, and also another rookie on the bench where Nasiah can actually loophole between players. So sometimes a bench score might be 30 or 40 points. You might still end up ahead by having that Whitfield move. If I have one of my rookie players go 100, that decision to play the non-bye player. Now, I know Whitfield's obviously got the bye, so yeah, for people maybe at home screaming around. So maybe Rosie's the better option here to compare. But let's just say whoever it is, we'll say Rosie because he obviously doesn't have the bye. If you're going that player that doesn't have the bye and my rookie pops that week, you are actually going to be less off than if you'd started the bye player anyway. So it all depends on how those rookie goes. Now, you might have that rookie as well, so which means that player's included in the 18th, and now we're scrolling back. But if my 19th player still pops out of 50 or 60 points, I'm probably even with you anyway. And I've still got Nasiah on my team where you're going to be scrambling trying to get a player like him. So unless you feel like Nasiah is going to drop massive cash and you're going to pick him up for 520, 530, which I would find hard to do because difficult to see a world that happens just because how dominant he should be in the midfield this year. Yeah, I wouldn't probably be avoiding a player like that. There are other players that we can discuss that might be other options because there's better options to choose from. But in this situation, when you look at it, which non-bye player are you choosing ahead of Nasiah? So most of us are going to have Rosie anyway, and I very much have Rosie. He's in 57% of teams. So that's not a comparison. I'm choosing Rosie over Nasiah because everyone's just choosing Rosie. Jordan Clark was an option, but now he's injured. So he's out. Whitfield, Ash, Sinclair have the same buy. So you're only kind of saving a bit of money if you go there. Now, I've got no problem if somebody wants to go, I'm going Whitfield over Nasiah because I think Whitfield's going to have a better year, whatever. Okay, that's a different story. Zorko has a buy. Bailey D, Blakey, who I quite like, Mills, who I quite like, all have buys. It's only Laird there that doesn't. Noble does. Dacos does. So you're scrolling down. So of the guys who should probably be top defenders, there's nobody else that doesn't have a buy anyway. So I feel like it's just pick Nasiah, and most of the comps on him anyway don't probably get too, play. Well, yeah, I'm trying. Cute's the word. Don't get too cute trying to leave a player like him out, and go find out in this situation where Nasiah starts the year at 120s, 130s, and you pretty well your year's burnt because the guy that you've played that 1 week you got to score, but you're losing out so much on all the other weeks. So yes, Nasiah's in my team, Rosie's in my team. The other one that's actually come into my team recently. And we're talking about, obviously, these premium guys, and I don't think he's still highly owned. He's up to 10%. That's Tom McCarthy. So a real kind of point of difference still at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how that changes. Now, he is a player that doesn't have the bye. He is playing pure midfield at the moment in all the practice scenarios for West Coast, which does make it very appealing. In the latest intra-club, he was best on ground. He was the guy doing all the in and under work, feeding Harley Reid on the outside. So we know he came in preseason draft last year, went into defense and just, set the Supercoach world on fire. 133 on debut, then backed it up with a 101. And you obviously started to drop off, but there's a lot of great signs there for a guy that's going to be playing midfield. And I'm finding it hard now to sit there and avoid him. yes, no early buy, but again, so that comes down to you want to spend the extra money, as I said earlier, and it's probably that's where a better comparison is would you rather a Sinclair or Whitfield and Ash versus Tom McCarthy, and then what are you going to do with that extra 100K that you save? So, but I like the role. I can see if people are wanting to go up to these guys, but then the problem now with Sinclair, Whitfield, and Ash, they have the same buyer in the sire. I don't think you can have two premium buyers on this players on the same line at the same week. I think that doesn't work. So for these guys here with Sinclair, Whitfield, and Ash, you've probably got to choose one ahead of Nasiah if you wanted one of them. Yeah, having two is just too difficult for that period. If you were saying, okay, I want to go Blakey or a Mills, that would make fine sense. Like I've got no problems with that sort of call. But yeah, I'm just kind of liking what I see from McCarthy at the moment. Now that could definitely change. And he's the sort of guy. So there's a guy that came out of my forward line, which I'll talk about later. But they probably the guy I flipped to. And yeah, if it wasn't to work out with McCarthy, could very easily go back to that forward line player and just restructure a little bit how my team's set up. D4 at the moment is McKercher, playing halfback. Just Colby McKercher's just dominating at the moment, 42% of sides. I think especially you have a look at this potential growth in him compared to last year. We know it's his, apart from the fact it's his third year. So we've got that situation. But I think the big part is what he what he kind of did on that run home last year. So you look at some of these stores at the start of the year. There's 60s, 22, 50s, 40, absolutely awful. He was down to 287. And then the role changed. And then we started to see that 129, 144, 108, 123, 110, 106, 123, 118, and 103 on the run home. So if he is delivering those sort of numbers at 449, absolute massive value. If it was a case of what he delivered in the first half, that's a different story. But it's all about role, and it looks like he has that role absolutely locked in for himself this year. So unless something massively changes, again, I think he's a pretty safe pick for your defense. And then it comes down to the rookie. So I've actually taken Kitty Coleman on my side. I've got the money to put him back in, depending on which rookies I want to go. The issue with Kitty Coleman, the buy, and I get some people are avoiding him because of the buy, and he's in 49% of the teams. We know what he can potentially do with his scoring, but that isn't the right role. Brisbane still have Zorko, still have Wilmot, who absolutely flew home on the last year. He had 3 scores around the 120 marker, which was very handy because I had him in a couple of my drafts, so loved owning him. They've still got Jasper Fletcher. So where does Kitty fit into that side? And in the practice match, he did very well, but he played a half-forward wing role, defensive forward as well, kicked a couple goals, played brilliant in that role, which now makes me think, does he stay in that role? Brisbane looking for a little bit more defensive pressure, probably lets players like Zach Bailey off the chain even more up on that forward line. So it looks like they found a role there for Kitty. So the question's got to ask now, how many points can he actually score in a forward defensive role pushing up the ground? If he's in that plum halfback role, it's a completely different story. So one to watch, because at least for Brisbane, we get that first game where we get to see exactly how they're going to go against the Dogs. But at the moment, I think that's a bit of a question mark, even at a nice juicy price of $233, because we've seen before players in that sort of mark. Yeah, they can probably go 70, but it can be very up and down scoring, and it is relying on goals and tackles. Break leave and 43, something he can do. Played on that one game last year for the 72, but yeah, it is a completely different role. Now, if he comes out and dominates that first game and gets 100, it's going to be hard to leave him out, even if the scoring's going to yo-yo, because it looks like his break even will probably come to be reachable and make some cash. But in that first game, if it's sub 60, it's going to be alarm bells for a lot of coaches there. So instead of going Kitty Coleman, I've actually gone to my Tiger. For those who don't know, I am a Tiger supporter. I've gone with Sam Grill. again, there's quite a few options here. So we've got Jacob Farrow from the Bombers, who very Dawson-like in the way he approaches the game. And currently he's in 28% of teams, and I've played around with having him in my side. And there's also Taylor that's been picked up with Melbourne. We know the woes that Melbourne have. We know Stephen May is not going to be there. Yeah, they've got injury galore happening. So Xavier Taylor, who is, should be a good player for them, because he'll add good reading of the play. He'll have those intercept abilities, and we know intercept marks are absolutely gold when it comes to the Supercoach. So if Xavier Taylor has a look in early, definitely somebody we need to consider, especially if he is playing from round one, because he doesn't have that early bye. So Grill, Farrow, Taylor are all options for that spot for me. And yeah, Grill's the one I like best. The next one now, so I've got 3 lower prices, and now there is an obvious person. And it's Zeke up the top, 63% own. I'm going to just bypass him at the moment. Don't worry, I haven't gone silly. Zeke is very much in my side. He's just not in the back line, and I'll discuss that in a moment. So the 3 options in the defense, and you can kind of click on these in any order. I've got Josh Lindsay. He's been in and out of my side, but what the highlights I did see him of the intra-club game, looked very assured by foot. The worry was maybe his defensive pressure, but yeah, looked very composed in that back line. Think he's in from game number 1, unless something dramatically goes wrong for him over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I think he's a very good option. And I feel like him and a couple of the bench guys can sort of loophole around. And we've got lots of options. So you've got Gipkus. I don't have Gipkus at the moment. I just want to see him play throughout the whole preseason. I kind of don't want to jinx him either. It's hard seeing such a high pick constantly get injured. So I feel like I'm just happy to leave him out and watch him from a football point of view. But yeah, I've got no problem with people wanting to pick Gipkus in. And if he kind of dominates that preseason, it might be hard for me not to leave him in. Jai Sarong, I don't think he's going to dominate like from a Supercoach point of view, but he will be part of that Sydney lockdown defense. He'll play every week and just give them something which will free up the other defenders in there. I feel like that's very beneficial for your Mills and Blakey, just to have another tool that's going to take some pressure off them. So I think he's just a constant. I think he's the perfect D8 going forward, and just somebody that when we need, in case of breaking glass, because we've got an injury that week, Sarong just comes on, maybe gets our 40 or 50 and gives us a score in that spot. The last position for me, there's a few actual options here, and I know a couple of guys have buys, and as I said, Gipkus is not too bad. I see like Harry D. The problem is it's sort of just close to that 200K mark. Zane Dursma is meant to be doing some good things. At 169 as a defender forward could be interesting. I do like, there is a player. Okay, actually, I should mention Caleb Wimser. We need to sort of see how he goes when Pickett comes back. But he played in the midfield today and absolutely ripped that game to shreds. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see sort of what his role in when Melbourne do have their full complement in that midfield. Archie Roberts, I've heard a lot of people talking about, only in 4% of teams, but, yeah, definitely a leader there at the Bombers, and he might see a lot of ball and he's going to continue to improve. And, yeah, I don't mind that one. Cal Mills, a couple of people have messaged me about him, did average still 99 last year. Again, that early bias, the issue. But if you're kind of maybe something really left field instead of Nasiah, maybe it's a Mills or a Blakey. So I don't mind that so much. Blankinson could be the real smoky here. He is meant to be the first ruck for Essendon while Brian's out. Now, how many weeks that'll happen? Is it going to be 5 weeks? It could be 6, 7, 8. He is a natural ruckman. He actually had to play defense last year just because they were so short. But I don't love the price at $295. I wish it was a bit cheaper, but he could actually become a defender ruck status for round 6, which would be quite unique. So I don't mind that so much if you've got the extra cash and maybe you want to go up from Kitty to somebody completely different. Giath playing out that Melbourne defense again, $358. It's an awkward price, but he should see a lot of ball. I've heard a couple of people mention Salem to me, but for me, it is now. Actually, I'll see if he's improved, because a lot of people had Carmichael in, but now that with the injury, It looks like he's going to be replaced by a Bulldogs guy in Lockie Jack. So he's up to 5%, 19 years old, playing off that halfback flank. So really interested to see how he sort of goes about it and that. But at 119K option, again, it's an early buy, which is frustrating. And that where maybe Gipkus is the better option if you want to get up that extra 20K, just so you've got that extra warm body for that week. But it might not affect so much because it's best, obviously, 18 during the buys anyway. But yeah, if he looks good in that round 0 match, yeah, he's the guy that I'm more leaning towards at the moment. A lot of water to go on the bridge, as I said, but yeah, quite like that for now. Midfield. So it was when Supercoach first opened, I didn't have the Bont in, and then did the research for the coaches panel and couldn't get him in quick enough after I did the research. I couldn't speak more highly enough about what he could potentially do. The stats actually is just ridiculous. So I think I said on the panel, he's played 56 games in 5 years at Marvel, and 49 of them he's tunned, and something like, I think it was 21. He's gone 140 or more above, and now he's got 13 games there this year. And I think he's second or third best ground at scoring is Adelaide Oval, and they play 3 games of their first 9 at Adelaide Oval. So with the Bont, his worst venue to play at, his worst team to play against is Brisbane Lions. So they do play them first up, but that is around 0, so that doesn't count. The only thing that counts is his price change when it gets to, well, for him, after round 2. So there is a feel from some people we might have to pick him up sort of 80K cheaper. Now, if he was to have an absolute stinker first round, that could happen. The problem is if he comes out against GWS, who is another team that he does struggle against compared to some of the other sides out there, it could be a case of he could lose some good value, and you might be able to pick him up cheaper than other people are. The flip side is that game was at Marvel, and as I just said, his scores at Marvel over that time, a 56-game period, he's averaged 130 at Marvel. 13 games there this year, and he has some games against some good oppositions there early. The big one being Essendon, and he has absolutely towed Essendon over the last few years. Geelong, he actually has done surprisingly really well against as well. Freo dominate, loves playing against Fremantle. So the question will be, if you don't start Bont. Now, best case scenario, let's just say he does drop back to 620. He's dropping back to a guy like sort of your Dacos or Realm, that sort of area. Even then, trying to get one of those guys in, sometimes it's 3 trades just to get them in. If Bont doesn't drop that much, now I feel like he drops a bit because I feel like he's a 124, 125 guy this year. He's not going to keep the 130. So even if he drops 40 or 50K, how much more difficult is it going to get? Like trying to get a 600K guy in is hard. Trying to get a guy who's at 650 is really difficult. And the problem is, when are you going to get him in? So if he just smashes this, let's just say he smashes this, might not even be Essendon. He's done really well against Geelong in the past. But let's just say he does smash one of those teams early on, and he pulls out a big 140, 150, 160, even more. And majority of the competition have him in. So you're all of a sudden, you might have injuries, you might be trying to upgrade your team, get the best rookies in, everything like that. And now you've got to scramble and completely change your week trying to get in Bont when other teams are. Now, there might be a midfield there that you've got that other people don't have. But then you're back in that midfield to equal, if not, well, at least get within a reasonable amount because of that money that you're slightly saving on going another option. But then I just try to think, how do you get in? What is your plan? Now, you might have a mid-pricer that you're banking on to have a big spike early on, and then you can mid and swap into him. Maybe it's a Jack Steele. Or you are thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to go another premium, and then once Bont really starts hitting his straps, I'm going to, pivot there. But just the problem is, if Bont hits it from the start, that VC captain option each week could be absolute dynamite for owners and could put you guys in a world of hurt. So that's just a little bit of a thought. I have seen, as I said, Bont in teams, Bont not in teams. it's hard to leave him out. Only in 22% at the moment. There are other options. I can understand if people are trying to avoid the buy and that, or going for other buy options that weekend. So I have him in. I just think he's a 1-2 with the most obvious player to be linking him with. Butters is only in 53% of teams. What are the other? Well, it's not even 47% because I think the most or highest owned player in the league is Jaeger at 75%. So realistically, of the real teams, not just people just thrown in aside, 22% of those people, what are you doing? Not having Zach Butters. Out of contract. We think he's on the move, but he's still going to be trying to, play the best footy possible. Their fixture at Port Adelaide, they start off with North, who were losing against their other team in the intra-club. Essendon, struggling, will struggle. Sorry, Essendon supporters, but, already getting injuries, you name it, whatever. I don't see a world where Essendon's making the 8. It might make the 10, wild card this year, but I think the struggle is there for them again. West Coast, we know they're going to be down the bottom 4. Richmond, bottom 4. So those first 4 weeks, he should have an absolute field day. He has racked up some massive scores in the past against them. And then he gets St Kilda for Gather Round, which will be a massive match, and they'll go well there. And then they play 3 games on the trot at Adelaide Oval. It's such a beautiful draw for Zach Butters. And outside of him getting an injury, can't see how he's not going to not only dominate the early rounds, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's the number 1 guy this year. As I said, I feel like Bont regresses down to about 124, 125. It's only a 4 to 5 points Butters needs to find to then overtake him. So I feel like they're the clear 1 and 2. VCC options every week. I just want to lock them in. McCluggage, I'd probably criminally zone 5% because of how well he went last year. Surely the tag goes to him and not Neil this year. Neil just runs around, does whatever he wants. McCluggage, teams can't. Surely they can't just let him run, especially with these new rule changes that sort of let those inside-outside players. It helps them because of, rules of the mark and the tackling rule and everything going on with that. I just feel like it's going to be hard for him to maintain because sure he gets attention. If he doesn't, that's a different story. But yeah, you can't just let Hugh McCluggage do whatever he wants. Jeez, it was a great year by him last year. It was such a hard non-own for me. Matt Rowell was one of the first guys I picked when the Supercoach opened. I don't have him in because the more I sort of think about it, the rule has changed now with tackling. So if where somebody like Matt Rowell last year, you get you'd shrug off and you'd break that first tackle. Now that's just going to be called holding the ball. Prior opportunity, bang, you're good. He did that time and time and time again last year, so I don't think he gets away with it this year. Also, those less stoppages that just happen because of the rule changes, I feel like that might have an effect on him too. As good as the fixture is at the start of the year, and geez, I love that fixture that the Suns have, and understand why some people want him or Anderson in their side, because they are playing all the teams that are expected lower in the ladder. But the early buy, again, that change, bringing in Petrarca and sort of how does that impact with the fact, they've already got Tuke and Bailey Humphrey and quite a number of good players that want to run around that midfield. I feel like it's an avoid, which is disappointing because, that Rowell in the past, there has been seasons where he has started on a house on fire. I want to kind of see how he does go under these new rules, how it sort of affects him, how it goes Anderson. There was some talk about Anderson going down to the half-back line. But West Coast, Richmond, Melbourne, Essendon in that first 6 weeks. It's a very juicy draw, but again, they does have that early buy. So it's an avoid for me. Bailey Smith, outside of losing his license, is doing wonderful things again in the preseason. Surprised so many people are fading him. Again, it is that buy, but somebody that I think needs to be probably appreciated more. He carved last year. Like, you look at his 2025, even the finish of the year, 156, 119, 141, 131, 129. It didn't drop off. There's games he does miss, so that might be something, but, he had a long layout out of the game, so I can understand that. But, geez, he racked up the ball. Outside of the fact that he's a pure midfielder in Supercoach, I don't see why the lack of love. Yes, he does have that early buy, but there is other players getting picked who do have an early buy, which it's funny that why people are saying away from Bailey. Don't mind him as an absolute pod. And now about picking pods as well, don't just pick them for the sake of picking them. But somebody like him who has proven scoring, it's only just the worry about the potential of injury, but still played 20 games last year. And it looks like more people are going to the guy. Actually, it's funny that scored more in total points, but averaged slightly less. That's Nick Dacos. Now, saying that, Nick Dacos did come into my side today. Again, it is another early buy player. There are some other options that I could potentially pivot to that don't have an early buy. It was hard not owning Dacos at points last year, and it was also good not owning him. But yeah, I didn't have him for the Brisbane game. Comes down and scores 172. Some people started him last year, even though he had that early buy. It was looking a good decision early, and then just went nuts for a few weeks. Then I brought him in and had the worst part of his career. But once he got going in that second half, there was a couple still poor scores, but that period there when, he's got the 157, another 131, 169, 177, really hard as a non-owner. We know Nick Dacos is such a fantastic player. Sometimes I get the hate because it's kind of, if he probably played anywhere else, he'd actually probably be liked. I feel like that's probably more the issue sometimes. And there's little parts there of the game, but I think he's for the most of it, he because it looks like he does more outside than inside and can't win a contested goal on that, but he does win contested balls stuff. It's just more, I think, sometimes with the contested marking, but does he need to really do that? That's not really his job. And sometimes I feel like, again, if he was playing for a more likable team like the Dogs, he'd probably have a lot more love about him. Nick Dacos, and it always does feel like, I think sometimes we're, the umpires and more the media too, the way they do kind of talk him up, where other players probably don't get the love that they might deserve. And I think that's probably more the issue. But it's hard to not see a world where Nick Dacos just doesn't go in there and dominate like always. Yes, it does have the early buy, but again, as I was saying, that week where, okay, cool, I missed out that is if there's a feeling that you feel that he's going to dominate and he's just going to be that many points above. Now, originally, I actually didn't have him. I had Finn Callahan, and I'll talk about him in a little bit, but that was sort of how I pivoted and went to Dacos. There's a couple other options that I kind of look at. It's not a great start to the year when you consider it is Adelaide. You got the Giants, potential tag there, Brisbane. But then there are some games where it could open up, even Freo, Carlton, Essendon. He always loves playing on Anzac Day. So I could see a world where you fade him, but then Collingwood and the G, they just get in periods there where they play there's 4 games in a row there. Then it's later on they have West Coast, they Marvel, and then all these MCG games. And I feel like they're the runs that Collingwood are just going to get on, and they'll bank wins. And because they don't have a forward line as well as they have in the past, and they struggled they were winning games, but they're probably struggling to put big scores on the board. I think Carlton was a game they scored maybe 100, but there was quite a few games where they were 60, 70 points, and very reliant on Jamie Elliott. They've lost Mychek. Bobby Hill isn't playing this year, and they're 2 of their top 4 scorers from last season. So it is literally Elliott and Membry kicking their score. And then I think, who do they get in from McStay last year from Brisbane? It might have been in that top 5. So very reliant on those 3 kicking a score. I feel like their games are going to be more defensive, and you're going to see Collingwood, when they win, it might be sort of 80 to 60. Where if games are close, that means scaling's up higher, and it means Dacos is getting more points. And especially he does like to go forward, kick a big goal. He's going to get more points for them. So there is a part of me that really likes that, because I can't see Collingwood going, like maybe a Geelong would, 110 to 50 and just blow out, or just, massive scores on the board, especially when they're playing at home. I just don't see how Collingwood would kick large scores this year. Now, that's not saying, again, they're going to win, not win games. I feel like they're quite defensively sound. But, yeah, there is an issue with their forward line. So I think the closer the games, the better for a player like Dacos. Other options are, not Dunkley. Brayshaw's an interesting one. I don't mind that. Doesn't have the early buy. Same with Jordan Dawson. Sort of guys that's, are they going to probably build on that average? I don't feel like. I feel like they're that 110, maybe to 115, paying for what you get. You're just paying for the fact that Dacos, they have a buy. They don't have a buy. Dacos does, if that's the way you want to go. So, yeah. Again, do I just back one of my rookies to come on and score well enough and feel like Dacos could potentially go back up to 120? Those guys sitting 5 points below them. Even if Dacos is around where he is, maybe Dawson and Brayshaw are, 111, 112 guys. So I'd rather probably just back Dacos in there. I think Dacos is better for that VCC role anyway. So I did have Finn Callaghan. Tom Green's gone down with an ACL. He is the guy that would have been feeding out Finn Callaghan. I thought it was all there for Finn this year. Now, not saying Finn won't go well, but the tag, he does have Clary now feeding with him, but it's a big step up for, Clary, new side to, do what Tom Green was going to do. So I've actually got faded the pick. Yes, there's more points there for Callaghan, but he's not going to get fed as much as he was. So I'm going to completely leave that one alone. Ed Richards at 2%, you feel like they could be a bit low, but again, some of these players do have buys, and if I'm going to go a buy player, I want the guys that I know are going to. Well, I feel like there's some meat on the bone there. So Dacos, can he go 120? Yeah. Can Butters go 125 plus? Yep. And Bont's just the Bont. Outside of that, there's not a lot I like in this sort of price range. Zach Merritt's probably getting undervalued, but because of everything on the off-season, now not being captain, but no early buy. You could see him having a massive year. It might not end well for him either, but you could still see Zach just doing his thing. Caleb Sarong's underpriced. Understand why people are avoiding him, more that inside player. Goulden, 31% of teams. He is massively owned at the moment. Now, he is undervalued. He is priced. And I have thought about it because he is 140,000 cheaper than Bont. They both have the same early buy. So this is where the problem of the premiums is it too many buys the 1 week in the same line? Yes. So I don't like that because now where, you're getting the 19th player covering you, the 20th player, it starts to drop off a little bit. Now, it does make it harder. The fixture, it is what it is for a team that didn't make the 8. And let's see if this will play ball. Yes, it will. West Coast early enough, straight after that bye in round 4. It's, hit and miss a little bit there. It's for the Swans, but I feel like they improve enough, especially the fact that he's got Charlie Curnow to kick, that a lot of these sort of maybe 50-50 games, say against Collingwood, even if you want to call it 60-40, I feel like more confident that the Swans will win it this year. Same with the Giants. So I'm quite bullish on the Swans. I feel like they can finish top 4, if not higher. They were the dominant team the year before, got trounced by Brisbane in the grand final, had injuries last year, feel like they bounced back. We look at, Goulden last season, and why is he so cheap? Well, did not place. So many did not place, comes back. Of course, he's going to have some low scores coming back, getting the feel of it. Still had a nice 146 there against the Dogs. We know what he did the previous year, and we go back to 2024, and this is probably why people are thinking, oh, well, can Goulden come back? The new rules. He did have a couple of sluggish periods, but early on he had that 149, 129, dropped off, and then started to put it together, a 157 and a 151, a 142. Some nice scores in there. If he plays that more midfield time too, there's definitely an appeal. I feel like for Goulden, because of that early buy, that fact that they've got Brisbane second game, who are the reigning premiers, that might be a struggle. They do play the Hawks there. Is that a guy that potentially, when it comes to this, where is it here? 2020. I need 2026. There we go. 2026 to really summarize this. But Brisbane, Hawks, and then West Coast after their bye. is there a world where somebody doesn't work out for me? We get a premium injury, or maybe it's McCartney's just not working out or something like that. And I don't really want to trade premiums, but if there is a premium that potentially goes down, is he one that if he gets started early, I could potentially, or we could potentially side swap to. Now, if you look at his projections there, they've got him going 102, 107, and at that point, he hasn't even gone up to money. And even if he goes 105, they've got him projected losing money. So let's even say if he was to have a hot start in, obviously round 0, looks at goods, comes out, and, he starts going like maybe a 120, which I don't think is the sort of case. But if he was to start, we start looking at that, can he, what's his sort of jump up? Well, we're looking at guys probably jumping up maybe 13, 15K. It's not going to, where I was saying, how do you get to Bont before? Getting to, say, a Goulden might be an easier reach. So I'm probably happy to wait off and just to see sort of how he goes early on. Unless he completely, that first game, round 0, he comes out, goes like 140, then might be a different conversation. But yeah, it's hard to have both him and Bont in the same team. And yeah, I'm leaving him for now. And then outside of that, there's not really anyone I like in this price range, especially those who don't have early buys outside of going down to Jack Steele. And that's just because, the situation where Melbourne have just been depleted and they've got a guy that still scores really well. And I think it probably undervalued it, like how well he was still scoring at St Kilda last year. Did lose his role for a while there. They did have McRae come in. There was looking at one stage that he was going to get dropped. So if we actually go, 2025, he was playing for the Saints. So there was that sort of period there where, he had that 46 and he wasn't looking great. Then he started to bounce back with some really solid scores, some decent hundreds there. But he's finished outside of the Giants game. And then here, a couple of games where he just did not have the role. But there was matches there, 97, 114, 132. We're sort of seeing the Jack Steele that we expect. How much cash is he going to actually make? That's the question. If he is the one and only guy there in Melbourne, can he go 110? Yeah, definitely a world. And definitely somebody where I don't mind that as the move because he doesn't have the early buy, where if Gordon starts going or if, Steele stops going, that's the guy that you could pivot. Maybe Steele makes a bit of cash to actually close the gap on one of your sort of top end premiums. But that I don't mind that so much. Outside of that, there's not really, again, too many guys I personally like. I know some people have messaged me about Sam Walsh, and I understand the appeal. The outside game potentially could. The injury history worries me, and I'd kind of want to see it for multiple weeks. Not saying that, comes out again, round 0, does his thing. Do you get tempted knowing that it's Richmond the following week? Yeah, there might be some temptation there at that cheaper price. But yeah, it's Sydney first round, SCG. Is that really going to be the Sam Walsh game to dominate? Now, again, yeah, as I said, if he dominates, there you got to think about it. But yeah, I feel like it's probably not going to give us the information we need. It might be a sort of the guy that we avoid, and then by the time he actually gets going, it's too hard to bring him in. But will I back in the other guys I've got? Yeah, probably. And I'd probably be more comfortable there. It just kind of worries me. He's the Blues have had all sorts of issues with their injuries for a while. Who's he kicking the ball down to now? It's kind of Harry or bust for them. Yeah, the price is nice. That's probably the only thought around that. So that's my premium guys anyway. Next we'll move into the mid prices. So Hayden Young, 53% owned, comes in as that third midfielder. They look such a better team with him in there. 389. I'd rather him a little bit cheaper, but yeah, he's such a quality player. And then miniguns, Darcy Parish next to him, who has been doing everything right this preseason. The game probably doesn't suit him as much as it did, but they need somebody shoveling the ball out. They do have Caldwell there, but that's his role. He does it so well at 334. It is a nice price for somebody like Parish who can easily make 100K, if not more, on that. So I don't know if Young and Parrish, how long you get to keep them for. Up to the buy would be great. If there's a world where they became season keepers, awesome. But you're planning on upgrading them and just closing that gap. If 100K, great. Yeah, I should say good, but 150K to 200K would be perfect. If they can get up to that 500 plus mark, and then there's a proven premium that's dropped, that side swap will be, and when that happens, hopefully around that buy time would be perfect. And that, use that as an upgrade. So really like those two we know what role they're going to play. And it's for me, it's hard to sort of get away from them at the moment. You potentially could avoid, and you could go another premium. Let's just say if you really did like, it could be Gordon, for example, 170,000 on Young to Gordon, 170,000 off Parrish gets you down to one of the better midfield rookies. So you could do something like that and go more guns and rookies. It's probably it's one of, I think, 3 mid prices in my team anyway. So it's more gun rookie as it is. But if I really wanted to, I could go real guns and rookies. It just, I guess, depends what rookies stand up through preseason. If there's more that you just got to pick, then lock them in. All right. Jagger Smith, he's the most owned player in the game. There really shouldn't be much to say about this. Everyone should own him. Would have come and played probably round 1 last year. We knew about the injury. Unless he doesn't get injured again, it's all good. Put him in your side. I did say Zeke's in my side. Here he is. 199K is a lot to play for a guy that's coming to a pretty stacked team. But Dimmer did say if he was available last year, he would have played him. He's going to come onto the wing. They've lost some senior players, Buderick, Flanders, Fiorini. So I think he replaces Fiorini out there. And he'll just slide in there. Bright might be the best scoring. Might only go sort of 60s. But he's such a good young player. Even after missing so much of his under 18 year, it's not going to make a difference. I think he's going to be a difference for them, and he should play all season. And it's just more of a question of when do we cash him out. I've got Will Brodie there. He's actually sitting on my bench at the moment. Did actually pretty good in the practice match. In and under, they needed a little bit more of that. I get Kane Corns' criticism that, why are they bringing in just non-world beaters, players who have been rejected by other sides. And it does have that little bit of feel for that, but at the same time, it adds some depth to their midfield. It probably try to free up Butters and Rosie a little bit more. Jason Horn-Francis, Bergman to do their thing if they get sort of a Brodie come in and be a bit more in and under. So, I think that's fine there, especially for his price. He should impact enough to make us some good coin. I don't have Dersmer at the moment. He's rumored to be playing wing. I feel like he's going to get bounced around very early in his career. So there's going to be some good games, poor games. So I'm just leaving him alone at the moment at 203,000, as much as he doesn't have the early buy. In regards to Josh Smiley, he's not going to play early. Take him out of your sides, guys. It's just there's too much of an injury history there that Richmond are going to rush him in. So I say that's a big no for me. So leave Smiley out. I really actually like Patrick. I'm going to try to say this right. Richesko. I love butchering names. But he's going to play wing for Richmond. Richmond only really have Ralph Smith on one wing, and they've never replaced Ellis on the other one. So he comes in from Geelong, mature aged, and has done nothing wrong preseason. He's a great bench, sort of M10, M11 for you. That's going to play some early footy. So really like that. There's Harley Reid. Actually played really well in the practice match. It's just if he was 300,000, probably in everyone's side, but no thanks. We've got Ollie Greaves at 99K is an interesting one to watch. Hawthorn's midfield is absolutely depleted. We know the fact that Warple's gone to Geelong, and now Will Day's out for pretty well the first half of the year. Players are going to have to step up and play in those roles. And there's an opportunity for Ollie Greaves to get some game time. If he's in there at 99K, hard to leave out. I've looked at Daniel Annabelle. Again, he looks like he's playing more outside. If he becomes, a guy that I've just got to select, that's where I was talking about. Maybe the mid prices move on, or I move one of these rookies to him. But I've actually got the Richmond player in at the moment, Sam Cumming. Prestia, no surprise, hamstring. So that has actually opened up some more midfield time for Richmond. Taranto is playing more forward as well. So it's clearly, I feel like it's 2 steps backwards for Richmond this year to go 5 steps forward. Lawler, Taj Houghton absolutely dominated the intra-club, played in midfield and was best on ground. I think he's 267k forward. But yeah, Sam Cumming, who I think if people were surprised that he went on draft night ahead of Roby and a couple of the other players, but very composed, reminds you of very much like Dangerfield, the way he goes about it. I think people are worried too because, was the kid not smiling on draft night? But, he does actually have braces. But he was part of that midfield of the South Australian team that won the under-18 championships. Very underrated about that sometimes. I feel like people kind of go, okay, they're Vic Metro, they're the ones that get selected. But, yeah, the championship team, that's the one you want to be targeting, and they were so much better than everyone else. And Cumming was a very big part of that. Bit of Richmond's recruiting strategy this year, picking South Australians to complement each other there and make them feel a bit more at home. So, yeah, I think he does get opportunities. I'm not a huge fan of the 176, but with no sub, Richmond, the way they're doing their midfield, would not be surprised if he's in around that midfield mix come round 1 against the Blues. As I said, if you've got to have potentially the money, and it's only sort of 5k to get up to Annabelle if that's the play there. But I quite do like the Cumming pick. And the last one is for Essendon, and I've probably scrolled past him. I have Dyson Sharp, 63% of teams. This guy should be the guy that locks in the rising star this year. The growth factor for him might not be anywhere near as big as some of these other players. He's the one that comes in and already has it. It reminds me very much of like a Darcy Parish type. Comes in very comfortable at the grade. Is he going to become that A+ player in the future? No. Is he going to come in and be a 200 game player? Yes. Very safe pick. You know what you're going to get out of him. And I think that's fine with the way Essendon's drafted, because somebody like Roby, we have no idea what we're going to get out of him. Roby could be by far the best player in the competition. He might end up being, more, I think, because of injuries than anything, stop him from being the potential that he could be. But they've paired the guy that could be an absolute superstar with the safe pick. It's feel like when they picked McGrath and they had the choice between McGrath and McCluggage, everything going on with the Essendon at the time, they went the safe pick. McGrath's going to play 250, 300 games. He's a leader, plays solid enough football. But is he a world beater, superstar? No. Sharp at least plays more midfield, but I feel like that's going to be him. And you can't have a team of all superstars. You've got to have somebody in there, in and under, working hard. I feel like that's more Sharp, and he's going to complement. So you're going to have Farrow. You're going to have a guy like, as I said, Roby. They've brought in other players around that. They've got a bit more excitement, Caddy and Kako. And I don't mind what the Bombers are doing. I feel like the next sort of the one more draft. I know there was some discussions around Merritt in, out. If they got the right deal for Merritt, probably then they can maybe look at it. Do you want all those picks in one draft? Maybe it's better if they try to get some picks in the next draft in and have one more crack before Tassie come in. They are quite young as a team, but yeah, if they could get maybe 1 or 2 more players to complement that list and they all have different skill sets, I kind of like it. If you're an Essendon supporter, I think you've probably got the right to be a little bit more bullish on the situation than maybe in previous years. The only thing that's going to haunt is that sort of Cox, Reid, Perkins draft. Zach Reid, fine, great player if he can keep on the park. But yeah, I kind of like what they've done there with that mix. So yeah, Sharp's should be in 63%. He should be probably the same ownership as Jagger Smith. Forward line, we scroll down to this now, so we keep going on. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the fact that this sort of in-depth analysis of my team and what I'm sort of thinking around some players. Harry Sheezel, even if he plays half forward, even if he plays midfield, wherever he plays, Harry Sheezel's a gun. And yeah, I think second highest pick player so far. Just get him in. It's no early buy. I feel like that's a no-brainer. Liam Reedy, I've played around with the forward line. I've talked about him. Flanders, 63%, probably should be up there with the highest owned players coming across from Gold Coast. They're paying him a lot of money. will complement what they're trying to do there. 390, yeah, perfect world would love him a bit cheaper, but yeah, he's that third mid-pricer that I've got in my side, and I think most people should have him in their side, so there's not much to say about him. He's a proven scorer. Philippu's been absolutely smoking the preseason. Both have the same buy, very annoying. I'd rather only have one Saints buyer there and then kind of loophole a guy off the bench that week, but can't do anything that week because, you kind of got to just pick both. If they're fit, ready to go, you just got to have both of them in. I've gone Dev over McRae. Dev played sort of the wing, a little bit of midfield time in the intra-club match. Fine F8 at the moment. Obviously they've been chasing him for the last couple of years. Decided to stick around for Brisbane. Was part of the, I guess the team or the squad out there. But didn't crack it in for those premiership teams for obvious reasons. So now he gets his opportunity to go out to West Coast and show what he can do. And I'm not surprised the ownership's not so is that high because he should get opportunities there. I have had Petrarca. Now before I said who was the McCarthy's come in for someone. McCarthy came in for Petrarca. Petrarca the early buy versus McCarthy that doesn't. The difference with these two is I feel like they score reasonably the same, if not more, for McCarthy. So that's one reason I've done the swap there. I do like that Gold Coast run. I want to see what Petrarca's role is. Is he playing more midfield time and he's in there and they're sort of shifting out a little bit of Anderson to fit him in, shipping out Took? Or is Petrarca playing that mid-forward role? Is he playing more forward time? I want to see what he's doing first to be confident. We get at least a round zero match to see it, and then, I can sort of make a switch. That's where potentially a Cherry down to a Visitini or just to give that extra cash to bring a Petrarca in is something that I wouldn't mind doing as well. So he's very much on the watch list, but I need to see. I feel like he'll still be one of the top forwards, top 3, top 6 forwards this year. So you can still pick him with confidence. It's just that, am I just going to get him later on paying for what he's priced? Like, is Petrarca getting up to 600,000? There's a world, yes. And if he looks like that's the role, then yeah, I'm going to start him. If that's the case where, he's spending time forward, he's going to be in the midfield, bit all over the place, I'm still going to have to pick him up between 5 and 5.30. Cool. I can hold off on that. That's not the end of the world for me. Todd Marshall's playing defense. They've got, obviously some options there on the forward line. It looks like they might even put a 2 ruck system in maybe. So they're trying to shore up their back line. Marshall has been taking some kick-ins as well. So that's one to watch how it's going forward. At 147, it's really hard to leave out. And hopefully he becomes a forward defender. That's the only reason Kitty Coleman could become still a decent pick. If he picks up forward defender and then Marshall does too, you can swap them around. So something maybe to consider there as a sort of link. But yeah, like that. Lombard, bit like Uland, another player. At least he's been in the system an extra year. He's going to be part of that squad too. I was saying to somebody a couple of days ago, the next 10 years, it is going to be scary how often Brisbane and Gold Coast are going to be up in that top 4, especially the Gold Coast Suns. They have so many academy players. It's going to get scary. Footy, I feel for people in country Victoria. Used to be a footy heartland. It's definitely been pushed on the back burner. We don't see AFL get played there outside of Geelong and Ballarat, which are pretty well, major cities these days. But yeah, there's definitely been a drop off on the amount of players being scouted, talented. The talent coming out of there, the money being invested into country footy, but it is all being invested in the southeast Queensland, and it is paying dividends. Don't get me wrong, but it is a Rob Peter to pay Paul situation, and they are taking full advantage of this southeast Queensland and Gold Coast. Adam Treloar, not with another injury. I'd have to see him play multiple games before I'm confident to go there. Congratulations, but to Adam on winning Sports Person of the Year for Greater Dandenong, which is obviously something close to my heart. Just going to throw that little one in there, but now well done to Adam. Sam Darcy is somebody I'm really interested in, and this is another one where if I don't want to go Petrarca and I want to go, say, a cherry down, Darcy, the way he's been playing preseason, looks great. Gets that second ruck. The issue is I want to see him play against other teams. yeah, it's fine. He's just belting up his own team each and every week. Let's just sort of see what he does. But he could be by far the number one forward in the comp this year. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to see how he goes in that round 0 match. And if he destroys it, then it'll be very tempting to start Sam Darcy. And that's just an adjustment of the team. Again, be it McCarthy going forward into Darcy, or maybe Cherry goes down and then using that money to bring him in. But really like that. Jamara, yeah, there's talk about him second ruck. I don't have as much confidence in that pick as others, and that just, how's his match fitness? Yeah, I get people picking him because of the name Jamara and they look at that price, but it's not like he's ever been a proven scorer. So, Sammy Lawler, it's an awful price, 300K, but I get the hype, just how much midfield time he's going to get in there. But yeah, that's fine. We've talked about CDT. I do have Cozzy Pickett in. He should be playing midfield. It should be Jack Steele, Cozzy Pickett, and then they'll alternate as the third guy. People are hoping it's going to be Langford. A couple others, maybe it's Windsor, as we talked about earlier. So yeah, really like what Kasai. They've signed up forever. He's their big multi-million-dollar man. They've gone out and got his cousin. It's all signs saying this guy is our main guy in the midfield. Really going to be hard to see him not progress on what he's been doing. Average 91 last year. Can he bump that to 95? Can he bump it to 100? Yeah, there's definitely scope for his improvement. And if we sort of take into account and we have a look at sort of what he did now, some of these games are games where he just played more up forward, but we started to see sort of those stealing scores. The game against the Swans where he just carved up. Again, it's sort of hard to get a read later on because, they still had Petrarca and Clary in there. It'd be devastating if we picked him and we sort of saw more of this, but I feel like that's more as a forward. If it's more the midfield and we sort of start getting these scores that we saw early in the year, yeah, definitely worthwhile. There was a period there up to around 11. He was averaging, so he missed the first 3 games, so he averaged 102. 103. How long can that stay for? But if you're thinking if he's playing pure midfield, there's every chance that he can. Is Darcy the better pick? Possibly. Comes buy versus no buy option again. But yeah, I think Cozzy's definitely got to be considered due to the uptick in CBAs that he's going to have this year. Lucky last, I kind of do like that ruck forward option, but I've made a little bit of a change. So there's McRae there, as I said, an option, but I've got in Lockie Doverston for now. Looked really good in the practice match. He's not going to be a big scorer. That sort of F8, F7 guy. He's going to get up the ground. Very similar to what we had at, I think the Dogs a few years ago with Waitman, and then Hawthorns. I was going to say Ginnivan. Their other little man, and his name's absolutely escaped me, but let's have a look because I am thinking about who was their little forward running around last year. I know people were screaming at me again going, oh yeah, Nick Watson. So, can he do a sort of Nick Watson? He averaged 64. Can Doverston get at least 50, 60? Yeah, not out of the question. Got a lot of skills, likes to hit the scoreboard. Definitely something North Melbourne needed. I know they brought in Constancy last year, but he's definitely an upgrade. And I think we'll definitely add something, a bit of pressure around the ball, bit of spunk, bit of fire. So I like that. The only thing is, if I go with the guy that I've got in flex at the moment and put him in the forward line, and then go maybe another option in a flex, another midfielder. So my flex at the moment is actually from Collingwood, and that's Harvey Harrison. So I quite like him as a pick because now they're actually looking at Angus Anderson to play some time in the match, but Harvey Harrison, bit of a pod there with 3% ownership. With the fact that there's no Bobby Hill now, he was probably best 23 anyway a couple of seasons ago around that mark. He's definitely going to be in it now, especially because it's not 22 and sub anymore. It is a best 23. But if we look last year, he did not play at all. And there was a reason for that, and that was because of injury. It had nothing to do with like a skill level. Been in the system long enough now. We sort of track back, and I think people might not remember, but unless you're a Collingwood supporter, there would have been sub-affected games, but he was definitely getting involved in that forward line. Yeah, he did have that 99 against Fremantle and 83 against the Blues and 74. So was scoring some good scores there. So I think he's the one that's they're V-marked. He'll come in now, now that there's a spot for him and come in and do his thing. So yeah, definitely somebody that I've actually think I've had him pretty well from the start. So I could definitely have him instead of Dobson. I've got 24K left, so very easily could go Dobson up. And yeah, there's some rookies around that I can move around to. If I can easily go Grill down, as I talked about earlier, to a Taylor or a Farrow to get that little bit of extra cash if I need it. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. That midfield, like I could definitely swap Sharp or Smith, but maybe because Smith has the Richmond Carlton game, I'll put that. Yeah, do it. Bench, they'll serve a purpose on that. Don't want too much money on my bench anyway. McAndrew is the interesting one if I want to try to get him to that flex position. Maybe a CDT comes in, and then we better put Cozzy on the field. And then we can sort of swap Lombard, Dovston, and Robertson. The good thing here, I'll put my vice captain and captain on, is those buy rounds that we've talked about. So round 2, the only issue not having Kitty Coleman is I don't actually have a loophole in my defence. So something I've got to kind of consider there. In that midfield, yeah, Dave and Harvey Harrison just changes into that. So I could do something like this. And then I could loophole Robertson with, say, Lombard that week. And just then I get both options there for my my best 18. So I quite like that option. Round 3, I unfortunately have both guys on the bench. Maybe there's another option. One of the options I do like is Avery from Gold Coast, but it doesn't solve that problem that week. Bont misses that week. So yes, there's a premium missing that week, but again, can do something with the loopholing. English gets covered by McAndrew, and then Lombard, allows me to loophole up there in that forward line. And then round 4, unfortunately, both Saints players are missing, so got the no loophole action happening there. Midfield, potentially Carroll might need to come into play here because I actually don't have a loophole for my midfield, which is frustrating. And there's actually the Saints players aren't dual status, so that's annoying. Messiah, I can loophole Sarong with Jacks, for example. As I said, best 18 when you think already there's 22 on field. So I'm missing, say, Nazaya, Flanders, Philippou that week. So that's 19 on field. And then I can still loophole these guys off the bench to, that gives me a 20th and then a 21st, 2 players there to loophole and another player. So, you're kind of bringing in there 24, 25 players that you're trying to get a best 18 from, which just kind of maximizes your scoring. So, I'm pretty comfortable with that. But then the other thing that you then got to start considering is your mid-year buys. So a lot of people going Rosie McKercher makes it really hard to choose other players from that round 12. And I think this is an issue where a lot of people getting caught up with these early buys, not thinking about the mid-year. And then this is where it gets hard because we do know that it's Port and North. And also is the Suns and Adelaide. So sort of Dawson, Rao, Anderson, those sort of guys, Petrarca. We've already got in that forward line Sheasel. So if you've got Petrarca as well, you've now got 2 missing from that forward line in regards to premiums, if that's the way you want to go. So how many of those guys? Because it's easy to trade into round 12 guys because obviously they have their buy earlier. So something to think about. Round 13's a very friendly buy. It's only Richmond who probably don't have any premiums. Fair to say. I can say that as a Richmond supporter. But and then now the Suns. Finn Callahan, is that somebody we look at then as an option? But yeah, currently don't have any of those guys in my team, which, can potentially maximize. But that's where the appeal for Finn Callahan was coming in because, just to have one person from that buy. But, don't have any from that buy. Round 14, gets a little bit more interesting because, you've got Collingwood and Fremantle. But, yeah, at the moment, Young, will he still be there? Would I be trying to move Young on to, say, a Callahan or one of those other players? That would be probably the play. Only day cost from that buy from a premium point of view, which is quite handy. Nobody in the defence, which is really nice. Round 15 gets a little bit more interesting, just because a couple of the premiums from Brisbane and Sydney, which I'm carrying none at the moment. So when you're talking about your McCluggages, your Neil, Zach Merritt, Goulden, your Mills, Blakey, and it's just McCarthy for me at the moment for premiums. And then, of course, Parrish, who I'm trying to probably upgrade by that time. And then lucky last is our round 16. And then this becomes probably a bit more difficult for some people because, Brisbane, so Geelong, Melbourne, St Kilda, and the Bulldogs are here. We got Nasiah. Really hard here also. This is why I like the idea of starting Nasiah, because you can't get him in after his bye because he's got the last bye. So it makes it really difficult. Bont's the same boat. So when are you getting them in? Like, if you're bringing them in, then you know that, they're going to have that bye anyway. English does have the bye that week. So you've got to kind of think about, not trying to have a player the same buy as Cherry, which is, Visitini. If I was going that way, I'd probably have him out on my side anyway. But at least Cherry doesn't have the same buy as some of those other players. Jackson, actually, the Ruck's actually pretty good. They've looked after us this year with the Rucks, with the way they've sort of kind of done with the buys. That forward line, Pickett, Flanders, do we try to upgrade him by then? Quite possibly. So all things to think about. Having Darcy in there instead, does that work better because we've got him instead of, say, a Cozzy Pickett, or if we've got both Pickett and Darcy, just that extra person to negotiate coming in there. But it is harder to trade in sort of round 16 guys, because now a lot of people have used a lot of their trades coming into 17, or you're trying to have a full strength side by the time you hit round 17 anyway. You're usually not trading to upgrade your side there. So just something a little bit to think about. So yeah, I've got that's where I'm really probably more happy with my side, because I've really like how I've divided the buys for the mid-year more than anything. So if I am making a change, I try to think about that as well. So just a bit of food for thought. So yeah, so that's end up my side. So Nasiah, Rosie, McCarthy, McKercher, and then four rookies. With probably more expensive one. Again, could it be Kitty Coleman, and then we take money off there, or we can move Zeke back. I like the flexibility of able to move Zeke around as well. So then, Bont, Butters, Dacos, with then the two mid prices, Young and Parrish, and then Zeke coming sharp as the expensive guys. Jager, probably could use him on field and go another cheaper option. That's what I was talking about before. Use Cummings cash, upgrade maybe Grill to a Coleman, and then have that extra cheaper rookie on there, like a Greaves or somebody like that. Very much can do that. Cherry English, like it at the moment. It is very set and forget. It's just a question of, do I want to go in another direction in regards to a cheaper option, and how McAndrew goes, but pretty comfortable with that. And then the forward line, Sheasel, Pickett, I like the two premium forward line, and then, Flanders is the mid-pricer. Maybe it's short of one premium. I'm relying on Philippou to have a good year, but I probably expect it. And then Marshall, and then I'm rotating between sort of three, in this case four, forwards from the flex position into there. But that flex position, like, I could very easily move on a Doveston and get a more premium, like a Jagger Smith could come in there. So yeah, I've got a couple options. I could go a forward mid type, and then that would allow me to then get Jagger Smith into that flex position, which, it might be the way to go as well. So, Doveston up to, it could be a Farrow, it could be somebody like that, to, allow more of a loophole situation. I wouldn't mind a forward mid in there too, but there's nobody else really outside of McRae standing out for me, and I don't know if he's really got a role at the moment. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And then when you sort of then, the big thing that we then think about is, what do we do with our captains and vice captains? And as I said, round 2, 3, and 4, there's all these guys missing. So I don't really need to start with a loophole guy. It's the only problem I might get into is if round 0, and that's where maybe a white for Melbourne might come into play potentially. But yeah, if you look at that sort of round 1 scenario, we've got, and of course my AFL app doesn't want to play ball now, but we've got the Carlton Richmond game as it normally is. Some people might be looking at kind of a Walsh type there, Essendon, Hawthorn, but probably the big ones is Saturday afternoon, Bulldogs are playing the Giants. There's a Giants team that's missing a few players, gave up a few more points in that midfield. So Bont is a very good option. If you are going maybe a Geelong Freo, I've gone a Geelong player. They did dominate Freo down there last year. But the big one sort of then comes on Sunday. North Melbourne are playing Port Adelaide, and that is a marvel. And though we, hopefully see an improvement from North Melbourne this year, it's hard not to back Butters into that match. And then, we go into the Melbourne St Kilda game. Nas becomes a real option as well. And then Suns versus West Coast, and especially the fact that the Suns are at home. So does Petrarca. If you've got a Rowell, if you've got an Anderson, are they sort of your choices at the moment? So I kind of like Bont into Butters and just kind of nearly back Butters at the fact that he's going to score really well. And then I've got rounds 2, 3, and 4. And then by round 5, you'll start to see 1 or 2 of these rookies not playing. Every year, we end up getting a dead rookie. One gets injured, one gets dropped. So I would rather start with probably everybody who I can for green ticks, not really worry so much about round 1 in regards to captains and vice captains, unless my vice captain goes absolutely bananas, and then I might reconsider that. But yeah, I think that's the way to go there, and then it'll sort itself out from round 5 onwards. Would love to hear about how you guys are going with your teams. I will get together and do like a live show, and we can start going through some of the questions that you guys have got as we lead in. State of Origin will be very interesting to see sort of how that formulates. And I hope you guys have been enjoying the preseason and enjoyed the content, and we'll be back soon. Catch you later. Bye.